Welcome to the Off the Charts Football Podcast. I'm Matt Manocherian, former NFL scout and currently director of football and research at Sports Info Solutions, joined by Aaron Schatz, the godfather of football analytics and the founder of Football Outsiders. Justin is off tonight. We wish him and all of the listeners a very happy Thanksgiving, and happy Thanksgiving to you, my partner, Aaron. What is going on?
Happy Thanksgiving to you too. So all of these things online, there are all of these memes and things on Twitter and Facebook where you're supposed to pick your favorite dishes for Thanksgiving. What are you partial to? What is your Thanksgiving go-to?
I'm partial towards stuffing. I love stuffing. Give me the stuffing with the dark meat, and I'm really good to go.
Yeah, I'm dark meat all the way, and I'm a sweet potatoes guy. I'm on team sweet potatoes.
Sweet potatoes, and then obviously serve it up with a side of football and probably minimal conversations with random family members. And that's my ideal Thanksgiving.
A lot of conversations with my nephew, who's 10 and loves to watch football with his sports writer uncle. Unfortunately, the Thanksgiving games are not that great this year, except for Buffalo at Dallas, which is why we're not going to be previewing any of those games on today's podcast.
Nope. No previews of the Thanksgiving games, but everybody enjoy them as you get ready for those today. And let's get straight into the most important games of this week so that as you digest these Thanksgiving games, you can preview these. What do you have? What's the first most important game of the week according to Football Outsiders playoff odds?
Well, at this point, the rumble for playoff spots in the AFC between the AFC South and the second wild card, assuming Buffalo has the best chance of the first wild card, the Rumble has so many teams in it that, of course, the most important games for the playoffs are going to be AFC games. So our number one most important game of the week is Tennessee at Indianapolis. Indianapolis goes to the playoffs 64% of the time if they win, 15% if they lose. Tennessee, 63% of the time if they win, 24% if they lose. Basically, the winner of this game not only gets a step up in terms of the wild card race, but they're now challenging Houston for the division title, especially if Houston loses to New England. The loser of this game is pretty much out of it.
Yeah, and you were talking about memes a minute ago, and this one has certainly got the feel of a Spider-Man meme sort of game, just with kind of all of these AFC South teams this year and maybe every year. But Ryan Tannehill got to be one of the bright spots that certainly emerged, and it's surprising everybody right now. He's third in the NFL right now amongst qualifying quarterbacks. That's with a minimum of 100 attempts in positive play rate. He's at 55%. And he also ranks sixth in total points earned per attempt, 25 per 100 attempts. Now, if you include sacks, he drops down to 17th. So if you include all kind of dropbacks and not just on those pass attempts. But I think, going back to that meme, he and Jacoby Brissett, both of them, good, solid quarterbacks, seeming like they can do win with jobs, but both guys that will hold on to the ball and take a few sacks from time to time.
Yeah, taking Brissett first, I'll say you have to remember Brian Hoyer was really, really terrible in the one start that he had for Indianapolis. So while Indianapolis is 13th in DVOA and 17th on offense, if you take out the Hoyer game, they'd be like 9th in overall DVOA, and they move up to something like 8th in offense. That game was really bad. Brissett is better than that. Tannehill, I don't know where this is coming from at all, but it's not just the quarterbacking. I wrote about this week. First 6 games of the season, Tennessee was 29th in offense. Since week 7, they're second behind only Baltimore, but it's not just passing. Their run DVOA has improved from minus 17.5 in the first half of the season to positive 12% in the second half of the season. So their run game has really improved with Derrick Henry. And it's worth noting Tennessee is second in the league in broken tackles on offense. That's a lot of Derrick Henry right there. Although they are better running on first down than they are on second or third down.
Yeah, definitely a team with a lot of kind of complementary pieces. Still, I think when it comes down to it, I don't think anybody would have expected the difference between Mariota and Tannehill to be like this, but that's the way that it's played out so far. So small sample size, but so far good returns on Tannehill outside of that Dolphins offense.
So you go back to the first game. This is a rematch, and Indianapolis won a close game in Tennessee way back in week 2, but how much can you compare that to now? There's been a lot of changes in the teams. Tennessee now has Tannehill at quarterback. They no longer have Malcolm Butler at corner. They no longer have Delaney Walker at tight end. Indianapolis is now without Eric Ebron. T.Y. Hilton will play, but he's clearly banged up. In the first game, neither team had a receiver with 50 or more yards. The passing was kept to a minimum. Even T.Y. Hilton was just 4 catches for 43 and a touchdown.
Yeah, I look forward to this one. I think that since then, we've seen the Colts pass defense really start to get a little bit healthier, and they've improved, I think, a little bit in kind of that phase. We've got them in 9th in expected points added since week 7 defensively. So kind of in pass defense, expected points added rather. So kind of moving up a little bit, getting a little bit healthier, kind of filling some of those holes that were there earlier in the year. In this one, I kind of like the Colts here. I like their ability to come back to kind of maybe bring Ryan Tannehill back down to earth. Like you mentioned before, the X factor, Derrick Henry, who could have one of those games where he just goes off for 200 yards. I don't think that would surprise anybody. But I like Brissett's chances to go off in this one a little bit better than Tannehill.
The other thing I'll point out, by the way, and this would point to, I like Tannehill a little bit more, and I like Tennessee. I like the way Tennessee's been playing the last few weeks, honestly. I mean, I guess I would favor Indianapolis because it's in Indianapolis, but right now on a neutral field, I think I would favor Tennessee. The weakness in their secondary is cornerback Rock Yassin, who is a rookie who is playing like a rookie. He's 65th among the qualified cornerbacks, allowing 10.8 yards per pass. So I don't know whether, sometimes he'll probably be covering Corey Davis. Other times he'll be covering A.J. Brown. But there is yardage that Tennessee can get there against him.
Speaking of rookie corners, just have to bring my guy up again because it came up when we were tossing back and forth some research for your Madden Football Outsiders November All-Stars. And the guy who's gotten targeted the most over the month of November is Nick Needham, our favorite corner, the rookie corner for the Miami Dolphins. But he's actually fared pretty well, the 50% completion rate against, and he's looked good in terms of points saved, leading corners in points saved amongst that time. So nice little shout out for Nick Needham there. I feel like every time I turn on the TV, he's getting thrown at, and the numbers certainly bear it out.
Between him and Preston Williams, they did a pretty good job with their undrafted. Is he an undrafted free agent?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job with their undrafted free agents this year.
Yep, definitely hit on those guys, and that helps when you're trying to clean house and bring in 50 new players on your roster.
That's right. Let's take on the second game, the second most important game for playoff odds. Still in the AFC, another rematch, but a much more recent rematch, and that is Cleveland at Pittsburgh. And if you remember this first game, before something wacky happened.
Was there a game that they played?
It was horrible. Then something happened, and we spent the next week talking about the thing that happened instead of Mason Rudolph being horrible with 4 sacks and 4 picks. But he's not even going to play in this game. He's been benched for Delvin Hodges.
Yeah, really tough news for Cleveland there that they're not going to get to face against Mason Rudolph in this one. Mason Rudolph has a very interesting distinction. He currently holds the Sports Info Solutions era record for highest rate of passes thrown at or behind the line of scrimmage at 30%. He is number 1 out of 170 eligible passers over that time with at least 200 attempts. So kudos to you, Mason Rudolph. I doubt that he will have the opportunity anytime soon to improve upon that mark, but we'll see. That's really up to Duck Hodges now.
The first time these teams played, the Cleveland running game only averaged about 3 yards a carry. Mayfield was pretty average, but against this Pittsburgh defense, that's actually pretty good. The Pittsburgh defense is 4th against the pass, 6th against the run. They barely threw it to anyone except for Beckham, Landry, and Kareem Hunt, which is sort of interesting because in the overall numbers for the season, Pittsburgh is 32nd against the quote-unquote other receivers. And Cleveland never even threw to their other receivers. It was just Beckham and Landry. Hunt had 46 yards. It's one of the best days that Pittsburgh has given up to a running back in the passing game this season.
Yeah, interesting just kind of looking back on that game. It really felt like Cleveland absolutely had Pittsburgh's number all the way across. But going back and you kind of point out that Pittsburgh pass defense, especially since they added Minka Fitzpatrick, they've been really good. I just gave you those since week 7 numbers. The Steelers since week 7, we have them 3rd in the league in pass defense, ahead of even the Patriots, only trailing the Niners and who else were they trailing? And the Ravens over that time, 2 decent pass defenses who might have a matchup coming up. But I think looking at this one, again, going back to the quarterbacks, it seems like Mayfield should have an easier time than Duck Hodges when you kind of think about handicapping this one.
It feels like Mayfield has turned it around again in the second half of the season. And I don't want to play this game with splits. I don't want Baker Mayfield to become the quarterback version of the Atlanta Falcons defense, where every year he gets better in the second half and we all think it's going to roll over to the following season, and it never does. Like, either get your act together, dude, or don't.
I mean, and look at the schedule. We called it out a long time ago, and
so much
played
easier
out
in the second half.
It's just played out exactly like you would expect. And the league this year, just the haves and have-nots in this league. You see the Cowboys, they can't beat a team with a winning record, but they beat up on all the sorts of Dolphins and Redskins and Giants of the world. It's been that sort of a season, kind of interesting, like lack of parity this year. But I think that's definitely played out when you look at the Browns and who they've beaten and who they've lost to.
So,
except the Ravens.
Well, yeah, nobody knows how the Browns beat the Ravens, and I have to keep pointing out that game did happen, and it does give some sort of information about how good the Ravens are. Let's take it to the Ravens, because the most important game of the week for Super Bowl odds will not surprise anybody. It is San Francisco at Baltimore. Baltimore makes the Super Bowl 42% of the time if they win, 35% if they lose. San Francisco, 37% if they win, 29% if they lose. Baltimore, especially if Baltimore wants to get the number one seed, they really can't afford to lose another game, because my guess is that New England probably will lose one more, either to Kansas City or to Houston. And that would tie them up, and Baltimore would have the tiebreaker. But if Baltimore loses this game, they fall another game behind the Patriots. That probably means they're the 2 seed and not the 1 seed.
Yeah, huge ramifications. And when we think about kind of this Ravens team, I think it's really interesting because the analytics community has really gotten behind them, and rightfully so. But it's also been interesting that they've kind of bucked the trend of the analytics community. All you've heard on analytics Twitter has been kind of an exercise in passing, and maybe a little bit of groupthink in terms of going in that direction. Here come the Ravens, and they really go all in on being run first, playing a lot of 3 tight ends, running quarterback. But here they are ranking first in expected points added per passing attempt, and that includes sacks. So interesting kind of switch of roles there for the Ravens, where they are, yes, the analytics team, but they're not necessarily doing just what the analytics crowd would say to do on paper. They're thinking divergently, and they're creating an advantage with that divergent thought by zigging where others zag.
Well, I actually went back and found an article I wrote all the way back in 2007 about the value of running quarterbacks to improving the numbers for running backs. And I think we're seeing some of that here with the Ravens, which is
no doubt
having the threat of Lamar Jackson opens up cutback lanes for the other running backs. And there's nothing wrong with running the ball if you can be this efficient. The reason why most analytics people are against running the ball is because they're against just 3 or 4 yards a carry, but the Ravens are getting a lot better, are getting a lot more than that.
And to your point, any coach who's coached offense or defense would tell you that the running quarterback is an extra gap that you have to defend, or that you get to exploit from the offensive point of view. And I think you bring out a great point, saying that can help the running game, and how all these years ago, looking back at it. But then also what they've done is really helped their passing game through the run. And there's been some doubt cast on the effect of, how much play action really matters. Do you have to run to set up play action? And aside from all those things, this is one anecdotal example. The presence of Lamar Jackson, whatever it's been, has not only improved the Ravens' running game, but it's also made his life as a passer much easier than it would have been otherwise.
I think it's interesting. We tend to think about play action. Does the run open up play action? Maybe we should be thinking about it the other way around. Does play action open up the run?
Interesting thought there. And just all of the Lamar Jackson, I've been resistant to saying he's the MVP. I think it's hard to argue against it at this point. Him and Russell Wilson certainly, I would think, are at 1 and 2 in the pole position right now. But now he's got me thinking all the way, where a few years ago, it's like, can you win with a running quarterback? Can this work in the NFL? And I think we might be approaching a point where we might get years in the future, and credit to Greg Roman and what he did with the Kaepernick scheme in San Francisco and bringing that to what he's done in Baltimore. But we might be approaching a point where you're at a real disadvantage if you don't have an athletic quarterback because of what you're saying about the running game and the way you can help and the way you can stress the defensive coverages.
As long as your quarterback can also pass from the pocket, and Lamar Jackson can also pass well from the pocket.
And maybe now with, I think 8 of the 32 starters in the NFL, last I heard, were from the state of Texas. No coincidence. Texas has all these 7-on-7 camps that they're going year-round playing passing football. And we're developing different athletes at the quarterback position. I think Lamar Jackson's really exciting for the future of football. There's been a lot of doom and gloom about, the concussions and all that kind of stuff. But if we really start to get great athletes, not just like the guys that have been great passers historically, but the guys that are like Lamar Jackson, and we start building offenses for this sort of football, I think the game could go to a really exciting place where we might be talking about teams lining up multiple kind of run pass option quarterbacks on the field at the same time and doing stuff that we haven't even imagined these days.
I would love to see it. Hey, listen, I am a big fan of the halfback option pass, so that little Heisman thing they do where they throw Griffin back there, I'm waiting for them to throw a pass out of that. It would be awesome.
Yeah, just wait for Greg Roman to just draft another guy like that and start to just roll that out as a base package. I'm intrigued by it. That's all I can say.
Now, a couple of strengths that the 49ers defense does have that will help them against the Ravens. They are number 1 against runs in short yardage situations, and we know that the Ravens do like to go for it on 4th and short. They are number 1 covering tight ends, which should help them against Mark Andrews. And they rank 5th in DVOA against quarterbacks rushing, although the Rams ranked 2nd and it didn't really do them a lot of good last week. So I don't know how much ranking 5th is going to really help the 49ers when Lamar takes off.
Yeah, and one guy I want to highlight on that defense, because he doesn't get talked about a lot, but he was the defensive player of the week this week. Fred Warner is just ridiculous. He's playing middle linebacker, I think, as well as anybody in the NFL right now with what he's doing in the run game, in the pass game. He's all over the field. He's sideline to sideline. Every time I watch the Niners, I'm focusing on the defensive line, and I find myself getting just distracted by what this guy does out there. Number 54, absolutely ridiculous. And I didn't know a ton about him coming out of BYU, so he's been a pleasure to watch.
Another guy, I don't have any stats in front of me on this. He just kind of jumps off the screen when I watch San Francisco, and he's kind of a journeyman. But DJ Jones, the defensive lineman, number 93, he's not known as one of their better defensive linemen, but I feel like every time I watch the Niners, he's making plays.
Yeah, it was funny because, they're always talking about all the first rounders and stuff like that. And here's DJ Jones coming out of nowhere. Yeah, I don't even know what his background is, but he's been a guy that, like you said, all over the place, behind the line of scrimmage, making plays. Fun to watch that Niners defense play right now. I'm curious, did you see the thing with Garoppolo's QBR was like 18 for the game or something like that?
Because he had a lot of yak. I believe it was because he had a lot of yak and because he got a lot of his value once the game was decided. That's what I read from somebody who knows more about how QBR is structured than I do.
It's always fun to compare kind of what you would expect and what you think just kind of looking at the box score or watching the game and then seeing how QBR, when QBR diverges with that, kind of digging deeper and seeing what went on there.
I think the problem for the 49ers in this game is the other side of the ball. It's that their offense is not as good as Baltimore's defense. Baltimore's defense is 4th right now in DVOA and 2nd since week 7 behind just the Patriots. And the 49ers offense is only 11th. They're lower than the Ravens in the pass and they're lower than the Ravens in the run. So the one thing I will point out, the Ravens are only 20th against tight ends. And obviously George Kittle is a huge weapon. Yeah,
George Kittle is scary for them, I think. Also because I'm not sure exactly what their matchup is there. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm interested to see how that one plays out.
I'll also say Marcus Peters is unbelievable with his historical record of just how many interceptions he gets compared to other cornerbacks. And yet he's the guy you have to go after. Because Carr and Humphrey are top 20 in yards per pass and success rate. Marcus Peters is 42nd in yards per pass and 53rd in success rate. You have to take the risk that he's going to jump a route and pick you off because he's allowing more completions and more yardage than the other corners in that really great secondary of Baltimore.
Yeah, it's funny because when you look at total points earned or total points saved rather for defensive backs, Marcus Peters does really well, 11.5 points saved so far this year. A lot of that, with all the interceptions and pick sixes. But even so, you see Marlon Humphrey, he's up at 25 points saved this year. He's getting targeted a ton, but they're not completing anything against him. And then Earl Thomas also ahead of him with 20 points saved himself. And how well he's sort of fit in. In the beginning of the year, it looked like Baltimore was having issues on the secondary and on the defensive side of the ball. But man,
for a few weeks,
as they've settled in and gotten to know each other, and then like you mentioned, the addition of Marcus Peters, it's really come together for them in a way that I think the rest of the league is a little bit shooketh right now.
And the return of Jimmy Smith, which means they can put 4 really good cornerbacks out there on the field.
Yep, Jimmy Smith, the old charting data favorite.
Yes. Let's go with the last game we want to preview, and that is the second most important game for the Super Bowl, which is Monday Night Football, Minnesota at Seattle. Minnesota in the Super Bowl, 16% of simulations when they win, 8.5% if they lose. Seattle, 18% with a win, 9% with a loss. These teams are exactly equal in DVOA right now.
Wow, that's unbelievable. I can't remember the last time that happened.
There's a rounding. The difference between them is like 0.04. Like it rounds out when I display the numbers. That's how close they are.
Crazy stuff. One thing we've been keeping an eye on over here, Bryce Rossler points this out, the Tyler Lockett Total Points Watch 2019. He's 5th in total points earned per target at 42 per 100 attempts, which is really outrageous totals. Adam Thielen on the other end doing really well for the Vikings on a per target basis. But that Tyler Lockett Total Points Watch is always fun to watch. We saw his perfect quarterback rating when targeted in 2018. So the advanced stats darling has become a volume machine as well.
I feel like I talk about this every time we preview a Vikings game, but I'll say it again. Xavier Rhodes, previously one of the top cornerbacks in the league, has been absolutely horrible this year. He's 69th in coverage success rate. Trey Waynes has been way better. So between DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, you throw to whoever Rhodes is covering right now.
And a surprising point, I think when you think of the skill of these guys, at 3rd and 4th in the league right now, both of the quarterbacks in this game in terms of passing points earned. Kirk Cousins, though, ahead of Russell Wilson by about 10 points earned. Even so, I would kind of handicap this one the other way. In Seattle, I know it hasn't been the same home field that they've had in years past. I think that Russell Wilson's been passing the ball as well as anybody this year. Kirk Cousins has been really good. Don't want to sell him short. But I like the matchup with Russell Wilson at home when this one a little bit better than I like Kirk Cousins going against that Seahawks secondary, which has been really improved the last few weeks.
I've said it before. I've said it on other shows. I'll say it here as well, which is I cannot think of a player with a bigger discrepancy between what stats say and what scouts say than Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, and maybe it's just the fact that he embraces the play action and that he's put in situations to succeed. I mean, in this offense,
but here it even is a stat that you guys are trying to separate out the effect of that he's got really good receivers. You're trying to separate out the effect of the offensive line of scheme,
right? And he still played great.
Comes out really great, right?
Yeah, no, it's fun to watch. He's confounding. Where do you stand on the Kirk Cousins debate?
I don't know where to stand because I trust a lot of scouting people who believe that he's not super special, but the numbers always come out that he's pretty special. I mean, I guess I lean a little bit towards the numbers, but I mean, I would rather have Russell Wilson.
And hey, here you go, another number to twist it on its head. I was just giving all the love to the Seahawks pass defense. The Vikings pass defense, according to points saved this year, has been better than the Seahawks, 14th as opposed to 20th in the NFL in points saved from a pass defense standpoint. Probably has something to do with the pass rushers there helping them out.
Although I will point out the pass defense. So a couple weeks ago, I referred to the Vikings as the most balanced team in the league. Since then, their pass defense and their running game have dropped off a little bit.
Dalvin Cook seemed like he was at an unsustainable pace for a while there.
Yeah. The other thing I will mention is when Seattle's on offense, they're one of the top offenses in the league in broken tackles. Minnesota is one of the best defenses in the league in broken tackles. So that's an interesting battle of strength against strength.
We'll be watching it. On that note, let's sign off and get out of here. Thank you all for listening to the special Thanksgiving episode of the Off the Charts podcast. Please help spread the word about Off the Charts by subscribing, rating, and most importantly, write us a review. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram. The Twitter is at sportsinfo_SIS and at FB Outsiders. On Instagram, you can find Sports Info Solutions at Sports Info Solutions. For my co-host Aaron Schatz and our researcher Bryce Rossler, I'm Matt Manocherian, and thank you for joining us for the latest episode of the Off the Charts Football Podcast. Happy Thanksgiving.